Hey, welcome to another episode of Footnotes. This is a bit of a reboot, something that we're kind of restarting after a bit of a hiatus. I'm John Barnes. I'm the president and CEO of Pendleton Street Business Advisors. We're in Columbia, South Carolina. And whenever you do a bit of a reboot, I need to get at least an easy start. And so I'm having a conversation today with a friend. We've known each other and been friends for almost 20 years. His name is Mitch Smith. And so it's going to be a easy conversation, hopefully about a difficult topic, and that's risk that entrepreneurs take. Risk is one of those topics that I think a lot of entrepreneurs face often, and Mitch is no stranger to that. He's I believe, a four-time successful entrepreneur, has had several exits, and lived to tell about it. And so I'm glad that he was willing to give us some time today to talk about his entrepreneurial journey and what that includes in terms of taking risks, when to take him and when not to take him. Did I cover it all, or is there anything else you wanted to make sure that people know about you out there?
Well, let's just say they weren't all successful. So,
Okay. Well, I mean, let's start there. I mean, you're well acquainted with risk, risk in business especially, and knowing now what you know about risk. What do you think business owners and entrepreneurs need to understand about risk that sometimes takes a while, takes a lot of lessons? Is there a way that you can kind of tell them a few things to help maybe shortcut some stuff when it comes to taking risk?
well, I think one of the big things to remember is when you think you've got everything figured out, just remember there are things that are totally out of your control.
Yeah.
Two instances for me, my second company, as we were launching it, 9/11 happened. I lost we had just negotiated some huge contracts up in New Jersey, New York, $1 million contracts. And of course, they went awry and never saw those, they never came back. So those happen. And then you have COVID. I mean, just things happen, things outside of your control happen. So no matter how much you try, just know that you're not in full control. But, I would say, in my younger years, I probably took more risk and took it upon myself to take all the risk. As I got older, developed more companies, I saw one having a partner, mainly an investor, come alongside with that, mitigated some of my risk. But also, the big thing for me was it gave me additional wisdom to draw upon to mitigate future risks. So I think that's key. Having a co-founder is a good one. I think that was a good one. That's probably one of the reasons for our first company being successful. That carried on to the next one.
But on that first one that you mentioned, where you actually took out a loan, I think for a lot of people, they think about, hey, borrowing money is a huge risk. It's one
Yes.
thing to kind of get other people's money, but it sounds like in the case where you borrowed money, I know you said you were inexperienced and you were willing to take risks, but what was it really like when you signed on the line for those loan documents? I mean, what was going through your mind at that point?
I was probably so naive. I did not realize how stupid it was at the time. But I had this innate confidence in I'm a sales guy at heart. I knew the idea we had could work, and I knew I could sell it. I just needed people to be behind me to back it up and do it. And again, that's what we did. I'm tenacious and hard-headed in some regards, but I think persistence. I'm just a very persistent person. And when we have something built or we're going toward a goal, I'm pretty persistent in trying to achieve that. And I think that was it. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend that again.
Why would you not recommend it? It sounds like it worked out.
And you got to remember, I was single. I didn't have hardly anything. So it wasn't like I was going to take my whole family down. It was just taking Mitch down. So I think that was one key thing. If you're married, you have a home, you've got children, whatever. I think I'd be more averse to taking out a loan than I was. I never took out a loan again. So that
Okay.
would be my recommendation. Just be aware of the impact. The key is, what's the impact if this thing fails?
What do you expect a partner to bring into a partnership that you're part of? Is it
Yeah.
money? Is it expertise? I mean,
Yeah.
what is it that you're looking for?
Again, I'm not good at many things. Sales is about the only thing I'm good at. And I can design a piece of software. I can design software, but I can't program it. So ultimately, finding somebody that's the opposite of you, or the yin and yang, they may say, that really is able to fit into the part that I was lacking, and that was the technical piece, the operational piece. So that was very helpful. The second thing is, whether it be a partner or another, or even an employee, is the things that you don't enjoy doing. You want to focus on the things that you're really strong at, and truly brings benefit back to the company. And being bogged down running QuickBooks is not one of, even though I had an accounting degree, was not one of the ones I wanted to be involved with. So the other thing I would say is, if your co-founder doesn't have, you want them to fit as close to the opposite of you. Anything left, outsource it. Your legal, your accounting, all that stuff. So you and your co-founder or co-founders are totally focused on what your strengths are, and stay focused and grow. Just grow the company as best you can. And in today's terms, because of AI and everything, now you're kind of stuck with not growing a great company, it's growing a fast great company. So speed now is of the essence. So that, again, even necessitates the need to get more of the, what I call the extracurricular, out of your way, so you can move forward without being encumbered with anything holding you back.
Yeah. Kind of that analogy of being unencumbered. I think a lot of people understand that. And even especially as it relates to speed, you think about a race car. Race cars don't have back seats. Race cars don't have upholstery. Race cars don't have a lot of things that, a passenger car would have. But race cars are also dangerous to operate.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big believer in design thinking. So there's a lot of times, in iteration, also pivoting. So the key is, yes, you have to move fast. The one thing I will say, one of my strengths has always been, I don't mind making a decision, and I will make a fast decision, but I never feared if it was necessarily a bad one, because I usually could figure out pretty quickly, whether it be through my business partners, my employees, our customers, hey, Mitch, this is a terrible idea. So we would immediately pivot, change the approach, whatever. So I think if you got to make quick decisions, and you got to know when you've made a bad decision, and that comes through, one, self-awareness, and two, listening to those people around you. So that was helpful, and I think that's what helped us in many cases to attain that speed, especially in our fourth company, which was the one that we failed in, and the one we raised the most money in, and the one I had the best management team in. We just came to market probably too early, and just even as we tried to pivot, it was just, we were still a little before true market adoption, and just can never keep the traction.
Mitch, given your experience as an entrepreneur in several different companies in varying levels of success, like you said earlier, they weren't all home runs. Were there certain characteristics that made the successful ones successful, even from like an internal standpoint? Of course, you had to have a market that responded to your product and service. We know that would be the case. But what about internally? What about in how you guys made decisions? Take us inside some of that.
For me, again, the one thing I've always been a believer in is J.D. Rockefeller said, surround yourself with people smarter than you are. So I've always tried to put the best people around, hire the best people, treat them the best. We had a culture where we didn't track. I've never had an HR manager, not knocking HR managers, but I never tracked days off, whether you were sick or your vacation day. I trusted you, and my goal was, hey, just make sure everything's covered when you need that day off. Because you may get tickets Wednesday night to the Masters on Thursday, and you don't want to turn that down. So the key was having a culture where they could flourish, but yet have freedom, and even freedom in creation. Like, we had huge whiteboards where people could leave ideas, and we really, looked through those. So we took everybody's input seriously, and I think that was a big key for us. I'll say in the last two companies, the thing that I realized for me personally was, while I was the founder, I was not meant to be the CEO. And that's when I determined that, my best role is to be head of sales and maybe product development or something like that, just because I usually designed our products. So I learned that for our company to flourish, I really didn't need to step back, let somebody else lead the day-to-day, and let me go build the best sales team and grow sales, because that's where my strength was.
You mentioned earlier about mentors and even other kind of advisors. What was it like when you maybe had help looking around the corner on some things? Maybe your team was focused on the task at hand. You were focused on the task at hand, on customers, revenue production, things like that. How about people that helped you sort of look around the corner? What was that like?
Yeah, well, definitely. I was fortunate, and the second company was probably one of our best successes, and yeah, we I think, had a good idea. We were right timing, but I had four businessmen who were already successful, older, who not only came in as to be my investors, but also came in to be my advisors. So they were very um, just solid. I mean, they really helped me look around the corner. That's also the second company where I realized the difference between an accountant and a CFO. The accountant can tell you everything that happened yesterday and the day before. I've learned that the CFO is the one to help you see tomorrow and know that decision I want to make today, what the impact's going to be in 30, 60 days. So whether it be a fractional CFO, if you don't have one, you need one, or a CFO. I was fortunate. I had a great one. And then our fourth company, even though it failed, I had the greatest CFO I think it probably ever was a guy named Doug Hooper, who I have no idea how we got him out of basically a $3 billion company to come in our little tech startup. But he bought into the vision, and came in and joined us. But again, that was the key, is having the people, even technology, having the right technology people say, hey, if we make this decision based on, today where AI is moving, are we moving in the right direction? And it's it's so easy. Again, speed today is the most concerning thing for me, and with regard to startups is, man, the decisions you have to make now. Think about when I built the first and second, even the third company. Those products had like a 3 to 5 year shelf life. We weren't having to modify them all the time. Maybe we'd add a few features here and there. Today, that's not the same. It's a constant evolution now. I would say almost every 6 months, you're having to make some additional modifications. So things are really changing fast. So being able to see around that corner, you've really got to rely on a lot of different people. And I think you got to find some, that's why I love what you guys do. You guys are very good at helping people do that, help companies look around the corner. And if you don't have people around you helping you, you will end up in a bad spot. I promise you
Yeah.
that.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning us. I mean, yes, I mean, I like to think that that is what we're helping our clients do is to look around those, certainly the financial corners. Yeah. We're not necessarily, we're not operational consultants. We're not people consultants, but we do, to your point, it takes an amount of money to fund a business, but it also takes an amount of money to help it go further, to help it innovate. I mean, the cost of growth is something that our clients are asking us to run the numbers on a lot. Is we want to go after this new market, or we want to open this new location, or we're doing a pivot. Maybe like you said, you had some external things that came at you that you had to just respond to. You had to react. And pivots, expansions, increases, I've never seen those not require some math. And I'm curious, going back to your comment about a CFO. I mean, what was that CFO doing for your organization that you found just so helpful? I mean, was it just giving you financial reports and saying, "Hey, Mitch, here are the numbers"? I mean, take us into some of those conversations that you guys would have.
Yeah, well, before we get that, I will tell you something that I think what y'all do that I didn't realize the importance of till my second, my second, third, and fourth company, is that as you look at, most people build companies to exit.
Mm-hmm.
So not only are you helping the company look at the decisions they're making for exit, you're looking at the impact that's going to have on the family, whether it be the next generation coming on board, or the donor advised fund they're going to set up to give away, $1 million to their favorite ministries, whatever it be. Most people don't realize that's what Pendleton Street really brings to the table on top of the business decisions.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, you're right. I mean, businesses want to make money. A lot of times businesses are started with an exit in mind, but when you get behind the entrepreneur or the owner or the founder's thinking on that, a lot of times there is a family involved. If not a family, there's a philanthropy involved or some other kind of cause that they think is bigger than them or more important. And to a person, I mean, I've been doing this for 18 years, to a person, every one of them has had a blank that they could fill in there with either being family, philanthropy, the next thing that they want to do. And that's kind of a role that the company has to take financially. In addition to meeting payroll, growing, just being a going concern, there's always one of those. And I think one of the differences in a true CFO is a true CFO is thinking about the company. They're paid to do that. They're compensated and incentivized to just think about one half of that. We're kind of doing both as best we can because one really informs the other. Those decisions aren't really made in a vacuum. And sometimes it's awkward for a business owner to ask their hired CFO, hey, can you help me also think about this family issue that profit from the business is going to help me fund and things like that. It sort of crosses a line that a lot of people don't want to do. And they probably should not do that. And so that's where we kind of provide a better buffer there for some of those things.
Right. To get back to your question on the CFO, again, I use my perspective. Sales and marketing after the product's designed is my go-to. So I've got the blinders on, really trying to do that. So I trusted the CFO to really be he showed me the KPIs we really need to manage, whether it be key our employees, making sure that they were in good place. So again, I didn't have an HR person, so he also had to oversee some employees, but just working team to, department by department, knowing what metrics we were setting up that were important for us to hit our numbers. He was good about that. How much development, more development did we need? I wanted to make sure we invested in our team for certifications and, their personal development. So how do we budget for that? Which ones benefit us and the employee going forward? So he was always, both the two CFOs I had in that regard were just really good. They were good with people, which is another thing. Most people think CFO is just about the numbers. The two I'll say were good with people too. So I knew that when I was gone, here's the thing I knew. I knew I was gone, everything's okay, because I traveled a lot. And I knew if I was gone, i.e. I got killed, the company was going to be fine. And he knew where everything was. There was nothing hidden. Everything, I ran a very transparent company. So he knew where everything was, just in case we had to, get a new CEO in, sell the company, whatever, everything was taken care of.
Yeah, going back to, because I think it's important, for viewers to, again, continue to hear informed thoughts on risk taking. Something I think I hear a lot of people talking about is what they're saying is they're describing doubts. In other words, I'm not sure if this will work. I don't know how blank will respond. I don't know what the market is telling me. There's sort of there's a degree of uncertainty. I don't think that that's necessarily risk. How does Mitch define risk as opposed to just doubts?
Risk is doing it to see if it works, not questioning it. That to me, that's the difference. It's putting it out there to see if it's going to work. If you only knew how many, I've got one of my accountability partner, Stone, who always laughs at how many T-shirts and business cards I have from companies that I'll create. I'll throw 20 grand into it just to see if I can get it going, see if there's anything there. And ultimately realize 3 months later, I was a dud. Those aren't counted in the tech startups, but those are things that I do try. I mean, I'll create something or I'll come up with an idea. I'll go do a little joint venture with somebody and just, hey, I'll try it and see if it works. So I'm willing to throw a little bit of money, a little bit of time at it to vet it just to see what the market's reaction is. And again, you'll know pretty quickly, hey, this doesn't have a, snowball's chance and you know what, or hey, maybe there's something to this.
Hey, maybe we'll end on this, but when we had our conversation before this conversation to kind of set this up, I asked you about, what is a myth out there that a lot of entrepreneurs really just believe and cling on to, and it takes them straight into the rocks. They just totally, break their ship apart based on this myth. And it was something about building things. I don't know if you remember what that myth was.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. So yeah, there's this myth out there that they think if I could just create this product, everybody's going to want it and they're just going to come get it. So I don't have to invest, thousands of dollars in marketing. I don't have to put a sales team out there. I just have to have a website and do a little social media, a few social media ads, and people will just come in droves and buy this product. And that's just not the way it works. It is very, very, very rare that happens. It's excruciatingly painful to get a product off the ground. Again, even today, because so muddy. There's millions of apps, there's millions of websites, there's millions of LinkedIn ads and Facebook ads and Google ads, and it's just you get lost in it. So trying to find your uniqueness is very difficult. So I think that's the big thing. We see a lot of now I see a lot of founders that I come across that are technically sharp, but they don't know how to sell. They don't know how to position their product and sell it.
A lot of founders and leaders feel like they are wearing multiple hats, and in some ways, you do have to make a lot of different decisions. You have to think about a lot of different things. But I think to your point about where you focus your time and your particular talents, it's sort of foolish to think that you can really cover all those bases that need to be covered adequately, much less excellently. This is just like, can you do C- work in every aspect of your business? Most people can't, but there's probably a couple of things that you can get an A- in. I'm sort of having to do a little self-reflection on that. But Mitch, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you being willing to just be as candid as you've been about your experiences, about risk, about how to handle that stuff. Really thankful that you got to come on here today and talk to us.
Well, I appreciate it. And it's always good to see you around town and run into you from time to time at some of these events.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably have more of these conversations, but
Definitely.
thank you for this one. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this episode today that we have with Mitch Smith. We call this show footnotes because a lot of times, you see the footnotes in the margin of a financial report. They kind of bring out smaller details that are behind the numbers. And so one of those small details that I picked up in the conversation today was when I asked him about defining risk. And Mitch said something really interesting, that risk is not necessarily the uncertainty. That when you're taking risk, what you're doing is you're spending money to decrease uncertainty. In other words, you put money into an idea to see if it's going to work. You have a level of uncertainty at the beginning and you spend the money, you take the financial risk to decrease that uncertainty, to sort of prove the point, to prove the concept, to see if there's a market or an audience. I don't know that I've ever heard it put that way before, but it makes all the sense in the world based on what we see in our clients' lives, what we see out there online and in our postings on LinkedIn. I appreciate you tuning in today and listening to that. You can find us at pendletonstreetadvisors.com, and we also post a lot on LinkedIn. Hope to see you there.